Hello and welcome to the Psychic Kitchen Podcast. Today we have Jimmy Davies with us and me, Thomas Sawyer. Our previously scheduled guest is not here, but hopefully he will be back. How you doing today, Mr. Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good, doing good. We were speaking earlier about trance channeling. So I was
Mm.
wondering what your experience are with this, because hold on, sorry. Lately, I have been channeling
Mm.
and I've been slipping into trance states.
Mm.
And trying to control it's a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, what do you see with it?
Well, the times that I've done it, there's been the odd time where I've gone really, really deep, and I don't know what other people's how other people do it or how their experiences with it is. Perhaps they want to share how they see it and how they feel and kind of how it happens for them. But I've noticed that the times when I've gone really deep, my speech slows and I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. It's just coming through. And I'm using less words as well, which is something that I kind of picked up on, that I noticed, sort of realized afterwards, after I came out of the sort of the trance. I'm fully aware at all times about the things that I'm saying, but just being more in the moment and not having to think about the things that are coming out of my mouth. I don't know if
Yeah.
that you've had that, if that's kind of similar to what how you felt with regards to it. Um, and so it's almost like you don't care what you're saying, in a sense. I know some people don't care what they're saying anyway, but you're not thinking about what you're saying and you don't care what's coming out of your mouth, um, because you're in that state where everything's good, and you just feel good. And I don't know, it's hard. It's sort of being truly, in some ways, I guess it's truly being in the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I've noticed is the messages that come through, it depends on like what I'm channeling, but it's like Archangel Michael or my higher self
Mm,
when I'm consciously doing it. But these different like frequencies or beings will be a lot different in how they act. Like Michael be like yelling and stuff.
mm,
Um, but and I have to like if I'm consciously paying attention to it, I can stop it and analyze for like half a second.
mm,
Um, but yeah, going into these states, it's interesting because I kept like asking, "What am I channeling?" Or like my higher self, and like, he can be a bit brash, so I have to
mm,
be kind of careful what I'm saying. But Edgar Casey would do this. I remember there was a channel of his, and the guy, because you could ask him whatever you wanted to when
mm,
you saw him, and he was like, the guy asked him, "Am I using? Do I have more chakras than seven?" And Casey was like, "Well, you're not even using two or three of them, so why do you need to know that?"
mm. Yeah, doesn't
Like it
matter.
was so brash. It was just like, what? What's the point?
Yeah, yeah. Kind of a sort of it's almost, I don't know why I just thought of it. It reminds me of an episode of Star Trek where the android Data, um, they're taken captive by the Romulans, and what the Romulan leader says is going to be giving a speech, and she says, "I don't get to give. I don't get to write speeches very often." And to Data says, "Well, perhaps you'd be better off finding another job then, that does allow you to write speeches." And a sort of that kind of that reply, which is just so matter of fact. Yeah, of course. And sort of, you don't necessarily realize what we're saying most of the time. We're not aware of the sort of maybe the contradictions or the things that we're saying are actually don't really make any sense. Why don't we find another job, or why don't we use all of the chakras? Why are we bothered about how many chakras we have if we're not even, mind you, that guy may not have been aware that he wasn't using them, but
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? It's kind of like we don't necessarily realize what we're saying sometimes.
Well, one thing that I got, so I had a class last Sunday. I have another one this Sunday if people are interested. I'm going to take people to like the angelic realm or
Mm.
heaven or Venus. I haven't really decided, but some probably the angelic realm or heaven too. But the last one I took, people started seeing like eyeballs. You know, like the old, you remember the angel pictures on TikTok?
Mm.
Like they would show real angels and it would be like an eyeball and then spinning eyeballs around it.
Yeah, like the seraphim, isn't it? Something
Yeah,
like
so they would started like seeing this
mm.
in there. And I know a friend of mine is like starting to connect them with a certain kind of angel, but um at the same time it's interesting this is happening to a lot of people at once. But I think like these beings want to start to like we're connected to them. But the message I was getting at with the letting go is that that was what everyone, like almost everyone in the class was getting when they
Mm.
were like talking to angels and stuff. They were like, just let go. And I remember, I don't know if you've ever seen Fight Club,
No.
but there's a time with Tyler Durden. This movie, I still feel like Fight Club's one of the best spiritual movies ever made, even though it doesn't make itself look that way.
Mm.
But there's a point where they're driving in the car, and I'm going to give away the movie because people it's 20 plus years old. But Edward Norton and Brad Pitt are the same person.
Mm.
Realize that at the end. And so he's like about to crash his car, and there's people in the back seat, and he goes, Brad Pitt goes to Edward Norton, he goes, Tyler Durden says to Edward Norton, basically like, what do you wish you had done with your life? And he's like, uh, he goes, I don't wish I'd done anything with my life. Like my life's a failure. And the people in the back seat is like, what have you wish you had done? Built a house, painted a picture. And then he just puts his hands off the steering wheel. And
Mm.
he's like, when are you going to learn to let go? And then
Mm.
he just crashes the car like off the side of the hill. And he's like, he just had a near life experience because they walk out of the car.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like,
Oh,
oh my God. When I saw this, like as a spiritual person, not when I was 19, I was like, oh my God.
mm.
But it is just letting go of like belief systems, ideas, these things that don't matter.
Mm.
Like we fill our heads with all this jibber jabber and problems and things that don't really matter in the greater scheme of things, you know?
I think it's maybe the idea is to work out is working out what matters and what doesn't, because um, we often find that when we see the most progress in ourselves is letting go of the things that we do that are not necessarily in our best interest, although they serve a purpose, obviously. Um, but it's almost like less is more most of the time.
Yeah.
The more, the less that we actually do, or the less that we actually need, it's almost synonymous with the happier that we are.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that, we can have our needs met, obviously. But it's not saying, but then again, I think it was the story of Buddha who had everything and then lost everything, or decided not to have everything, and that's when he sort of obtained enlightenment. Apparently, I don't know the story. You might know the story, but and then there was a story of I remember reading. I don't know if I think it was a true story. I'm not sure. I saw a video on, I think it was YouTube, about a guy who became a rice pounder. I think it just might be a sort of a story to show about the mind, and apparently he went to some monk Buddhist retreat or temple or something like that, and just pounded rice for years and years and years, every day, just doing the same monotonous thing every day. And by the end of it, he came out enlightened because he freed everything from his mind. And he was able to really understand what the mind was all about and how to use it, because he didn't have the distraction of what goes on around him. So he let go of absolutely everything, and he was able to tap into the wonder and the magic that is sort of the mind, and how it works, and how distracted we are from the sort of the use of it almost.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Buddhists, they have I think my friend had run across some Buddhists, my Tai Chi friend,
Mm,
and travels around the world. And he was like, these Buddhists, they have psychic powers. Like they can bilocate, they can do all these things, but they're like, yeah, we know how to do that. But once we learned it, we just kind of moved past it.
mm,
Like, oh, that's interesting. And they're
yeah,
like, nah, let's move on to something else. Because they're always in meditation.
yeah,
So it's like, how much of it like matters? Because people like, what's the number one psychic question you get, Jimmy? And like before, things got a little more psychological in the spiritual movement. But like, especially now, it's like, is John coming back to me?
mm.
Is so and so going to reach out to me? And it's like these are distractions.
It's all future prediction. People wanted to know the future, and I did, for a time. But now
Yeah.
I'm not bothered about it. I think, well, things will happen when they happen, as long as I believe in myself to be able to handle anything that happens, and do what I feel is necessary at whatever time, whenever anything comes up. Then you kind of think, well, you'll always be taken care of, because most of the time, or maybe you could argue that all of the time, things always work out, regardless of whether you think they have done or not. There are times when I'm sure you've felt, and I've certainly experienced this, and other people have experienced this, where you think, oh, something happens, you think, oh, bollocks, that's really a pain in the ass, and I wish that hadn't happened. And then, weeks or months later, you think, oh, I'm glad that happened though, because that led to that, and that led to that, and this happened, and that happened. And you think, oh, I'm glad that was sort of the thing that I thought was the worst thing in the world was actually the catalyst for something that was the best thing in the world, or really something really good. So you often hear about people losing who they thought was the love of their life, only for months or years later to find someone who's even more suitable or compatible, or who they're more in love with.
Yeah.
So, and then do you think, well, that wouldn't have happened if they'd have stayed with the other person?
I think that's we're on the same wavelength because that kind of came in my mind too on this one.
All
Is
right.
that like we get in relationships and I feel like our like romantic ones. And I feel like our guides or higher self, God, whatever you want to call it, just sometimes is like, nope, push them out. They're not worthy. Um, I'm channeling. Anyways, but they're not worthy, get them out. So it's like, but in your mind, you're like, well, this could have worked out. This could have, you don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Mm,
You could have had children with that person. It could have been a nightmare that you're stuck in for 18 years.
mm, yeah.
You don't know. Like you have no idea. But the heart speaks, I'm hearing. So
Mm,
that's part of the issue is the heart speaks. But it's like, do you listen to the heart?
mm,
Or it's like these other extraterrestrial civilizations, Jimmy. When I
mm,
talk to them, especially the
mm.
Syrians like fucking emotions, man. They're like, in my guides, are like, you guys and your emotions, like you need them, but you can work with this a little easier.
Mm.
Um,
But then
and yeah,
I hear that, or it's said, I've seen heard it said. Oh, question from Jackie as well. I'll read that in a minute. Uh, I heard it said that the emotions are the catalyst for manifestation, and without emotion, then we wouldn't be able to manifest. But I'm not sure if I.
I think we need emotion. I think it's just controlling it, how we
Mm,
react. like what we give our energy to.
Mm.
So I just think it's like, what is it you're giving your energy to?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we need emotions. They will help us. But even with the Syrians, man, they seem to be a lot angrier. I wouldn't say angrier. They seem to be a little more um like, in my opinion, they're the most advanced in the galaxy.
Mm.
So like they seem to have, like, when I asked about emotions, I heard been there, done that.
Mm.
Um because they're probably like billions of years older than us,
Mm.
you know? But they don't seem like they seem like no one really fucks with them because they can be like they'll be a little crazy.
They're
Um
under control. They're kind of like the Vulcans in Star Trek. So
yeah,
going back to Star Trek reference, Vulcans are this race, obviously, who don't show emotion, yet they're capable of massive emotion. It's just that they've learned how to keep it under control. You know,
yeah,
according to, you know,
yeah. I
it's the
think
stuff.
that's the key. I mean, you look at politics, you look at any of these things, and people are just like at each other's throats.
Mm.
And I'm like, does this really serve to change your life? Even talking about this. Like I
Mm.
posted something yesterday, it was a little crazy, but then
Mm.
I deleted it. But at the same time, um, like, does it even serve you to have that or reaction?
Mm.
I saw a guy, Jimmy. I know we have a question, but I saw a guy from like the early 2000s that had like 5 laptops around him, and he was harvesting energy by comments.
Oh yeah,
He put in the comments, and he's
mm.
like, energy isn't as pure,
Mm.
but I can take the energy from it.
Mm.
And when I look at comments in any video, it doesn't matter what it's about, man. Like literally, you could be watching a dog video, and there's some like half negative people in there, or really negative people, just like commenting crazy shit.
Mm.
And I'm just like, why? So sometimes I have to ask them, why are you here?
Mm.
Like,
Good question to ask us in general.
but just why are you even commenting this? Like, it doesn't even make sense. I get the political stuff, I guess. I don't really care about it, but I get it. But yeah, why it's like people are like pulling on each other's energy in these
Mm.
comments.
It does seem that way. But the question is from Jackie, is what do you guys think the purpose of deja vu is?
This one's interesting, Jimmy. So I have a couple theories.
Good question.
One of them is I had a dream, and I don't. This has happened since I've been a teenager, and I give the first one. I was at a park where they had video games. We were up all night and
Mm.
race cars and crap. And I was like 15 or 16 and a 14, I don't remember. But the point is, but so I was in the race car,
Mm.
and at that moment, like I remembered having the dream.
Yeah.
And then lately, I've had other ones like waking ones, but I was looking at something and like exactly what I'm thinking, feeling, and doing at that exact instant, I remember like I
Mm.
dreamed it. So I'm wondering if I'm seeing parallel like realities or like
Mm.
parallel things that could happen in this reality,
Yeah.
like years before they happen.
Mm.
So some people would say it's because you've been there in a past lifetime. Some
Mm.
people would say is because there's some remembrance that occurring. Some
Mm.
people call the whole Mandela effect, which I agree with it, but I think it's a little used out of proportion.
Mm.
And yeah, I don't. That's
Mm.
my thoughts on it.
Mm. Jackie, what do you think? And Janalva, Erica, Ada, those of you who are watching, what do you think of deja vu? What is it for you? Interesting to see people's sort of range of views on it because I've heard different views. I'm
Yeah,
not. I kind of the way that I almost see it, or the one that feels sort of I don't know more resonates more with me is that we're supposedly living multiple lifetimes all at once, then, and there's different timelines and all of that, then maybe deja vu is two or more versions of ourselves doing the same thing. So we're kind of syncing up almost. Although, because I also think maybe, well, I hear the one about it means that we're on our path, we're doing what we should, you know, blah blah blah, because we've sort of it's foresight. We dreamt or whatever that we were going to do something, and deja vu is actually doing it in sort of in this realm, so to speak. We did it in the spiritual realm or what have you. We were able to sort of see it and live it, and then this is experiencing it in this physical realm is just confirmation that we've followed through and done what we needed to do. But that one, I don't know, something that doesn't feel quite right about that one.
Well, even quantum computing, because you know this whole AI thing's getting really big, but quantum computing says that there's probably, they can't prove it yet, but it's getting to the point where it can tap into alternate realities. And I know this is actually a real thing. This is the original quantum jumping. The guy probably died in the last 10 years, but he learned the technique, and it's called, you can still buy it, probably like $400, but quantum jumping, and he goes to other realities and talks to other versions of himself to learn things. Like he wanted to do an award-winning photo. So went to another reality where he was like an award-winning photographer. And this version of him told us spin in a circle and take a picture. And so he did it, and then they all came out like crap. So then he goes back, and he's like, the guy was like, make yourself like a tripod, and do your body a tripod. And he did that, and then this is like in the 80s or 90s. And he did that, and one picture came out, and it won the whole prize.
Oh, really?
Like all the other pictures were shit, but this one picture. And he's like, I've done this with so many different things. He goes, it's only harder when you have to like learn an instrument. But he did learn how to play the piano without knowing any of the keys. He's like, that took a while. But like the other things are much easier. Yeah. So, I mean, he was teaching this was what he was the first quantum person, I think, to bring up that word quantum, like quantum jumping. And you can find him on YouTube, I'm sure, but he learned it in a Buddhist monastery, and he had to take a vow that he'd never teach it for like 30 years. But he could do it, but he couldn't teach it. So by the time I guess he taught it, he was like in his 50s or 60s.
Interesting. And it reminds me of something I saw the other day, but which had some replies. Erica says, I believe it's probably tapping into parallels or becoming aware of the other me's and different parallel realities. Jackie said, you basically just said what I was typing. And Ada says, when it happens, it makes me feel strange, feeling I've done the exact same thing and trying to figure it out. So it's kind of along similar theme about sort of doing it, but just maybe in a different sort of reality. In a sense.
Yeah, I think I've said this before, and I made videos about this, and I don't think people always like to hear it, but because your reality is up to you. So what you manifest, and I see this from people who are not spiritual, I see it from people that are spiritual. So it's like that there's a vibrational match to anything you want. Now, Bashar would say you move into other realities. I agree with him, but there's something I don't agree with on it. I kind of my way with Bashar with some things I agree with, some things I don't. That one's kind of iffy to me, but he's like, you're moving yourself into another reality. And I remember I had this girl that I used to be friends with, and we dated for a brief period, but she told me that she was like, in every reality you leave me.
Okay.
And I did the same exact thing to her in this one. But she's like, in every single reality, you leave me. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is a long time ago. It's like, I have no idea what she's talking about. But anyways, I didn't probably tell her that. I probably just looked at her like, whatever. But like crazy woman. But looking back at it, I was like, well, it's probably because you act this exact same way in every fucking.
Yeah, even in a universe full of endless and infinite possibilities, you still left her every time.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Michelle says,
let me throw this in. What's so interesting about that is we were intimate. And I don't know if other people experience this, but and it was very like our souls knew each other, even though she was very dark. And when we became intimate, like I got physically like sick, like twice. Like first I got a headache, and the second time, like it was like really bad bathroom stuff, but it was bad too. And I was like, it was like my energy and her energy just didn't mix. And I know people have realized this, and I think they need to realize that in relationships, like intimate ones. If you're having issues, like it could just be the energy is not good for you. It doesn't mean the person's bad. It just means you two are not like energetically like compatible.
Yes, totally. I see what you mean. Michelle says the French term meaning is already seen. Deja vu. That's what it means in French. Already seen.
Yeah.
So makes sense. Interesting. Good question, Jackie. Thank you. If anyone's got any other questions, feel free to.
Yeah, feel free to throw them in the chat. If anyone interested, I'll shout this out. It's in the middle of the podcast. Our guest isn't here. I do have a class this Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll be taking people to probably the angelic realm to talk directly to angels. I'll be putting some reels out about stuff like that. May go to the fairy realm too. I think I'm going to jump people to 2 different places.
Interesting.
Fairies.
Why not?
Yeah.
Speaking of, I just remembered what I was going to say. Speaking of parallel realities, I saw this. I think it was a maybe 30-minute, 40-minute, something like that. Clip, video, sort of documentary, so to speak, infomentary maybe, on YouTube. I think it was called. I think it was called The Vertical Line. Although that I might have that wrong. The Vertical something. And it was basically about. I think it was the 80s. Or was it the 90s? I can't remember. I watched it early in the morning, and so the details probably didn't sink in as much as they would do normally. But it was basically about a teacher in the UK, who is one of the first. Their school, I think, is one of the first to get one of these new computers, and it's just sort of your basic computers, nothing like what they have now, obviously, but it's one of the first computers. And he borrows one. It's just basically to do word processing and stuff like that. He borrows one and takes it home. And he lives in this farmhouse with his girlfriend, I think. And he goes out one night and leaves the computer on. And when he comes home, there's a message. Someone's typed a message on there. But it's typed in, I think it was 16th century kind of language. Have you heard about this?
No.
And so the guy sort of asks one of the other sort of teachers at school who's an expert in history and language and stuff like that, and they confirm it is from I think it's the 16th century or something like that. And they research it's basically they eventually find out the person's name who supposedly typed these things, and he did exist in the time period which the language fit or something like that. And there's this whole mystery about whether it's real or whether it's fake. And there are sort of arguments from both sides. And they eventually get to ask because they have a conversation. They type out something on the screen and then leave the house, and when they come back, there's a reply sort of thing. And they call in a UFO expert or something like that because and then someone from, I think it was 2109 from the future starts typing a message on this computer. And they asked to speak to this UFO expert from the time that is happening now, not the 80s or whenever it was. And only he can see, Colin, I think his name is, or something like that. And only he can see what the conversation or something. I can't remember exactly the details. I could probably go into it a bit more, but I found it quite interesting, and it's never really been solved or proven. And the people who were involved, the people who were staying at the farmhouse, did do a sort of an interview on it, but they didn't want their face shown, and they weren't very. They didn't want the limelight or anything like that, which suggests that they kind of either, I suppose you could say that there wasn't a hoax, because if it was a hoax, they'd want to be known for, or they'd want to become famous for it. But then again, I suppose if you're hoaxing something, then you don't necessarily want to be found out. So, but
no, I think it's real. I feel like we found the line in, is what I'm looking at. I mean, Casey predicted the future. There's a lot of medical inventions that we still use to this day, and some of his predictions didn't come true. But like the Gnostic text, he said exactly where they would be found, and it was like it wasn't like it was a region in the middle of the desert where someone was actually burning some of them before they came across them, like fire kindling, because they just found like all these pages somewhere. They didn't realize what they were sitting on. And anyways, but yeah, there were a lot of predictions. So I think that, and I remember that Robert Monroe, who he has an institute over here, but he works for the government.
Yeah.
But the Monroe Institute's like it's like a city over. And like in his book, I read probably the second one, like half of it, but he would go like, they were like, he was on an alien spaceship and they were touring Earth. And one of the aliens was like, I want to go to Earth and be a human. And his friend's like, don't do that, man. You're never going to come back. And so he jumps in and he comes back like 5 minutes later. And he's like, I had this great life, man. I like battled all these people and I had kids and grandkids. And he's back in like 5 minutes. And he's like, I'm going back. And he's like, no, 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 no. And so like he did it again. He comes back like 5 minutes later. And he's watching this because he's like on a ship full of like these energy aliens. And then the third one, like he never comes back.
Oh, really?
He just stayed. He was like, this is too fun. Like compared to our lives, this is like great. I think that's the perspective of what reality is. It's like, yeah, it's like something different could be totally fun.
As bad as people or some may think that Earth is kind of, is more fun than what other places in the galaxy.
Yeah. I mean, we have sex. I can say that on Facebook. Now we are not being monitored anymore. Thank you, Zuckerberg. So we have sex. We have all these weird things we can do. We can run around with our clothes off outside if we want to. Well, get arrested, but we can do whatever we want.
And that I double checked it. That thing, that documentary or whatever that I was talking about, is based on the book called The Vertical Plane, Plane, by Ken Webster. And there's various people have sort of covered it and summarized it in like the thing that I saw. I didn't read the book. The thing that I saw was just a YouTube sort of thing that someone done 30-40 minutes long, and I found it was really interesting. So it's kind of worth a watch, I'd say. It's interesting. But one of the thing that I found interesting about it was that when asked how the person in the 1600s or whatever it was were able to communicate, and they said when the computer was turned on or when it was operational, a light used to appear in their room, and they would just talk, and it was almost like a dictaphone, or it was
Yeah.
the words that they spoke would materialize on the screen, so they wouldn't be typing anything. They would just talk, and the words would be typed for them. So text to speech or speech to text, basically. And that's sort of.
I feel like we question too much, and I feel like past and present and future exist at the same time. So I don't know if I glitched out, but the past, present, and future exist at the same time. So what does that mean? I mean, that's the thing. So I mentioned before that one of my mentors told me I was abducted. He's like, "Do you know you're abducted?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, they put energetic tubing in your head. This is why you can move through all these dimensions so easily and interact with them." I'm hearing. And he goes, "It's up to you whether that's a good or bad thing. It's really up to the interpretation of the person that's a good or bad thing." And basically, I went to one of my first mentors at that time when that happened. I said, "Could you explain this to me?" And he goes, "The only way I can really explain this, because I've never heard this before, is that your future self did it." And I was like, "Myself from the future or another version of me in the future?" He's like, "I have no idea." He's like, "I've never even heard of anything like this, but that's what I would guess." Yeah. So if we are living different lifetimes and there's other versions of us floating around, who knows?
That's kind of, you could argue that that's what daydreaming is, isn't it? It's sort of being in another
Yeah.
parallel reality or what have you.
It could have been like another version of them typing to them or saying it. Yeah, but I mean, I'm trying to remember the guy's name because it keeps coming to me, but I can't, the story. He's in a farmhouse kind of guy, but he was on radio shows and stuff. But like aliens were talking to him. Even Tesla, he said he got all his information from like aliens. So like all this advanced stuff, they took a lot of Tesla's stuff, like they made him penniless, but he wasn't good at the business ideas of it. He was good at making stuff, but not doing the business aspects. But even with Trump, and I'm not trying to get political, but there's this theory that he's a time traveler. So, because his uncle got a hold of the Tesla tech. This is actually documented to some extent, not him being a time traveler, but the Tesla tech. And his uncle talked about it. And basically, they found, like, Tesla found a way to go into the future and see things. They have pictures of people that aren't photoshopped, where people in there don't look like they belong there.
Yeah, I've seen those.
1800s and stuff.
It is interesting. Janaba says, "At least we can trust ourselves." And that's a good thing. I think we should trust ourselves. Number one, trust yourself.
Yeah.
Well, maybe well, you could argue the order, but I think it's a good maxim. That's the right word.
Yeah, you just trust yourself. When you feel something, act. If it's like not for for your highest good, but if it's like what I hear Bashar, any of these people talk about, when you have a passion for something, follow it. Like that's your highest. That's the vibration. And even with him, because there's some stuff of his I listen to, but it's like some of these people, like, how do I put it? Like, you're acting like your energy is that way for a reason at that time. I'm channeling a little bit at that time. So whatever that passion is, that alignment is, go towards that. Like, don't look at the fear. Because when I have people ask me questions on live sometimes, they're like, "Well, I want to do this, but I'm afraid A, B, C, D, E, F, G is going to happen." I'm like, "We haven't even done it yet." 90, I go, just take it from someone that, had a lot of fears in the beginning too. 99% of that stuff is never going to happen. Like, you might deal with some other stuff, but You know, that's life. But it's probably never going to happen. You're never going to know. It's
Mm.
like dealing with rejection. Um, I don't know. I had a friend in my 20s, and he would go to a bar and talk to women. And he's like, Thomas, 8 or 9 times I talk to a girl, she's going to reject me. And I have to accept that. And
Mm.
I don't care.
Mm.
And so he just kept, like, watching him was like, I was like, what the fuck? Like, he just
Mm.
kept going. He's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
you don't take it
Um,
personally.
yeah.
I remember years and years ago when I used to go out, and I remember there was this guy who used to play football with, and we went out one night, and there was a group of us, and he was a sort of similar thing. He just used to go up to women one after the other, and eventually, come the end of the night, he would he would he would have found someone.
Yeah.
Um, that's just perseverance and not taking things personally. You're not being worried about rejection.
Yeah. And I think so many people now are like on dating apps. I see a lot of women write about this, but I can speak as a guy.
Mm,
Being on a dating app, I don't use it that much, but it's very annoying. Um, is that like people get so much attention,
mm,
and I feel just as a guy, it's geared more towards women because they obviously get guys in there. But it's like people get all this false sense of attention, and and then if you throw that over to social media, people are comparing themselves to other people because they're on social media, but you're only seeing a surface level of who that person is.
mm.
Like you know nothing about them.
No.
So it's like the CIA guy, I know I'm jumping around a bunch of different directions, but the CIA guy talked about this. He
Mm.
was like, people have like a public persona, a personal persona, and a private persona.
Oh
And I
yeah,
think people, when they
yeah.
see them, they're like, that's who they are all the time. And I
Mm,
was like, this, you know, this from being on camera, like reading and trance channeling, all that healing, is that like people are going to see your public persona,
mm.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
like they have to
Um,
be like that all the time. There's no way.
is that guy Chase Hughes? Is it Chase Hughes?
I'm not
Maybe
sure.
that's one probably. I've seen some of the things he's sort of said, and they make a lot of sense. Um, but yeah, people do tend to be different on camera.
Oh, yeah. 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 I mean, I see a lot of people act totally, some people get mad at me because, oh, like I'll just be a certain way, but
Mm,
at the same time, it just depends on the day. But I don't need to put on this like happy, like I'm so happy.
mm,
You know, I see people doing it all the time.
mm.
I'm like, I can see the pain in your eyes. I can read you very easily.
Mm,
So, yeah, I'm just like, I don't care.
mm,
I talk about whatever. I got myself in trouble many times, Jimmy, from this,
mm.
especially on Facebook. Just talking about whatever the fuck I wanted to talk about. You know, the person's like, "Well, why are you talking about me on camera?" I was like, "No, I never said your name." Um, but yeah, so I'm just like, I don't care. Like,
Mm,
who cares? Um, but yeah, it's like people want to put on this persona and not show people they're real. That's what irritates me, I guess. Because
mm,
you saw me on Facebook back then, man. I didn't give a fuck.
mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I'm not getting paid to do this.
Right.
I was gonna say whatever I want to say. I don't care.
Oh.
Um,
Another question from Jackie. She says, "Is it normal to see different versions of people you know during astral projection?" Astral projection.
I see different versions of people when I read them sometimes, and I've seen
Mm,
different people have seen different versions of me when I've been working or talking at different times. I don't know so much about the astral stuff because I don't really understand it. Um, how do I explain it, Jimmy? Um, I basically open a portal from one place to the next.
mm,
So I don't really mess with the astral realm too much. So that's why I don't understand the astral realm. I'm sure I go through it on occasion, I'm hearing, but
mm,
like just to look around or do something. But yeah, yeah, I guess. I mean, I've had people tell me they saw me as a lion with wings flying around.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Mm. Why not? I suppose.
Yeah.
Do you astral project then, Jackie? Does anyone astral project? Does everyone astral project? I has anyone ever? This happened to me a few months ago. I was driving along. I was in traffic, and all of a sudden I could remember everything. It wasn't as if I kind of just sometimes you hear people say, "Oh, they got somewhere and they couldn't remember how they got there." I can remember exactly everything, all the roads and all the cars and stuff.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, old dreams started coming up. And so I was going sort of in between sort of the current reality, so to speak, or whatever was going on, the traffic jam, and was going into all these dreams started coming through. I was like, well, what happened there then? And I kind of was aware I was doing it, or I was kind of aware I was sort of going between these 2, 3, or however many places.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like almost because you mentioned waking dream earlier, or I can't remember in what context, but
Like a
um,
vision.
and that reminded me of that, and I just wondered if it ever happened to anyone else. Have you ever
Yeah.
sort of dreaming whilst you were awake, so to speak?
Something interesting. It's just gonna be totally off. It's into what you're saying, but I was watching, about the Infinity Gauntlet from Marvel, I'm sure, with Thanos. But there was a storyline about that, but someone else got it, and they had the Reality Stone. So the Reality Stone can do all these things, but the Red Hulk's chasing them, and they're moving through different realities. And the person reading the comic book on YouTube like doesn't know if they're actually making the realities or going through them, but
Hmm.
because you can make reality with the Reality Stone in Marvel. So the thing is that um, I've seen myself go like through different places, different like timeline. I don't know if they're saying they're not. They could be timelines, but
Hmm.
like different things, like boom, 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 boom. Um, I think what I'm hearing is up to the imagination. It's up to the mind of the like wielder. They're saying, yeah, the whoever's doing it,
Yeah.
what they want to look at. Like you could go back to any pain point you have in your life and like
Hmm.
look at it objectively.
Hmm. All right. Okay. Cool. Janava says, I can see myself and surrounding unless it's too dark. Also was able to see my energy tether. Jackie says, I have once, but the people I encountered were grabbing at me to stay. It didn't feel right I didn't feel right for a few days. When I think about it, I can still feel what it was like when they were wanting me to stay. Interesting. Ada says sometimes she has visions when she's awake. But yeah, it's
Just
interesting.
make sure you call back the pieces of you. That's the thing you can do sometimes. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I've done this, especially when I was on Facebook. Um, occasionally, this happened rarely, but
Mm,
like a part of me would get stuck somewhere else.
mm,
A really simple method to do that was to go outside because I remember I called one of my former mentors and he was like, "Do you know someone in Peru?" And I'm like I fucking know. I was on Facebook. I was like, dude, I'm so disoriented. Like I'm vertigo. It was after a
mm,
live. It was one time this happened, I think. And he goes, go. It was freezing outside. He was like, go outside, put your feet on the ground, call yourself back to you. Like
mm,
you're part of you's in Puerto Rico right now.
mm.
And he
All
goes,
right.
there's some girl there. It looks like a witch. And I was
Mm,
like, oh, maybe that makes sense. I don't really know. But at the time. But I just did it and I was fine. In 5 minutes, I was fine.
all right. Really?
Like, make sure you call your energy back to you, because sometimes what I've noticed, even bringing people into higher dimensions, is I have to sometimes. Some people want to stay up there. They're like, it's
Mm,
so beautiful up there. There's angels and everything. It's like you can't live here.
mm.
Like, it's too
Yeah.
much energy. Like you're gonna fry yourself. Like you
Mm,
can stay up there for like 30 minutes, an hour, but that's tops.
mm,
Uh, while you're like conscious, like, but it's gonna burn you out if you stay up there for like days. So I have to like wrestle them back. I have to like grab them and pull them back in their body.
Oh, okay, cool.
It only happens randomly, but occasionally here and there.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yes, you've done that. Jimmy. I've done that with you, haven't I?
What's that?
Brought you to like a angelic realm or something?
I don't think we've ever done anything like that, no.
Yeah, maybe we should. That could be a whole psychic kitchen episode. Let's see what you experience. I can actually bring on some clients and do it while we're live, and you could like kind of join in. It might be fun.
Yeah, we could, if people want to come on.
Yeah,
we could sort of have a live session.
Yeah, if anyone's interested, message me, because we can fit that in.
Yeah, why not? Janava says she had to save her own life in astral. Something was taking her energy. There's like something.
What did she say? I'm sorry.
She says she had to save her own life in astral. Something was taking her energy.
Yeah, that can happen. That can happen. There's a lot of different beings out there. Some of them are good. Some of them are neutral. Some of them would be considered bad. I'm hearing, by our standards. That's the thing. Is that like, what does bad mean? There's obviously bad, but you get my point. So, yeah, you got to be careful. It's that universal law of challenge. If you encounter a being, especially like here, I'm hearing, ask it 3 times what it wants. It has to answer the exact same way. If it doesn't do it, it's not what it is. There's something about the number 3. So, like, you have to challenge it. And I mean, I've had people come to me, Jimmy, that there was one. I got to be careful on client confidentiality, but they somehow connected in with a different energy that's not good for them. And I have to remove that energy from them. Call that possession or being fucked with or whatever. Yeah.
Reminded me of when I was reading the Law of One, the Ra material, and there was a section in that they talked about how the channeler Carla Book Hart, I think her name was. They spoke about there was a time when the beings from Orion, who were trying to, because Orion was sort of, they said Orion was sort of a dark, shall we say, a negative or dark place, realm, excuse me. And they were saying that they were trying to, I think it was, I may have got this wrong, but they were trying to do something to interfere with the transmission or hijack or something like that. And it actually put her life in danger, her human life in danger. But they were nothing, she wasn't harmed or anything like that. But they had to be extra careful with the setup, and they had to put things in certain places, not only to connect with the Ra, the race of Ra, but also to keep her safe from attack.
That makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I've read part of the Raw material, but I only got about maybe through like maybe a quarter of it on Audible. I still have it on my book, on my Audible. But yeah, they just showed me the Wild West. So I think with the raw material, like at first, especially, like it was kind of the Wild West of doing it.
Yeah, I bet.
So they probably didn't have like, you got to put in like for that kind of stuff. I feel like you're going to channel like that, like stipulation and rules about what you're going to do. Yeah.
I don't think they really finished it though, because they started to do bits on the tarot cards and astrology and go into sort of the real meanings about each card and what they sort of the origins and how it all started. But I don't think they've actually finished it. They sort of did the main, I I'm not good on tarot. You know more about tarot than what I do. I know some of the cards, but I couldn't tell you. They did the sort of the main ones, the 16 or 32.
Major Arcana.
Yeah, the major arcana, that's the one. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. They did the major arcana, but then I think they did some of them, but yeah, it's a shame they weren't able to complete it. But
I think they did they do like 3 or 4 books?
yeah, I think there was 3 volumes, or
Yeah.
it was 3. But just the way that they signed off every session with the same phrase, Adonai. I think it was Adonai.
Yeah, it's actually a Christian interpretation for like God or something.
Yeah.
Because I know there's actually some Christian songs called that.
Oh, is it? No.
Yeah. It's like, I think I could be wrong on this, but I believe it's a Christian interpretation for the word God. It may be Hebrew, it may be like Aramaic.
Yeah. I found that quite interesting.
Yeah. Because there's like a universal energy of God. That's how I look at God. Like this universal energy. And I would say I'm hearing it's more than universal, but obviously. But yeah, I feel like people have become so enclosed in their thought systems. So that's the problem. It's like, how many psychics have you heard, Jimmy, that like even people like getting into it, they're like, what about like even witchcraft or whatever? But they're like, what is it about all this that's like I'm so afraid? And I'm like, but because you grew up in a Christian society. Like if there was no Christianity, if there was no religion, what would our perception of it would be totally different. Like if we were Aztecs, Jimmy, I know I had a past lifetime as an Aztec. We just cut people's heads off. That was like human sacrifice was normal. So like that was just like what we did. And that was acceptable. But it wouldn't be acceptable now, but that back then it's just like you did that every day.
That was just the norm, yeah.
Yeah. People clean their clothes in the river because the dead bodies would produce lye.
Question from Love Shift Awaken. It says, what is your take on the Emerald Convent? From what I hear, they are to rescue the lost souls that are stuck in the loop on Earth, and these lost souls are meant to be high vibrational and cannot get back out the duality Earths. So basically, the Emerald Covenant.
I have no idea what that is.
No, I've heard of the Emerald Tablets, but I'm not. But not the Emerald Covenant. But I've heard about the lost souls stuck in Earth, sort of within the reincarnation cycle, and there's all of that saying don't go towards the light when you pass, turn around and you'll see the universe and you can go home, sort of thing. Then there's other sort of theories or thoughts that say you can't leave until you've done whatever you needed to do. And then
I've been told that, Jimmy, actually. I had a channeler bring this up again. Not the first one. But he's like, listen, man, you keep coming back to this Earth as a warrior. He's like, you need to put an end on that contract before you leave. He's like, you keep coming back to fight, and you don't need to do that anymore. And then you won't have to come back here anymore.
Maybe you're just doing it because it's so much fun.
Maybe. Yeah.
She says, or he said, I'm not sure. She says Emerald Order. Have you heard of the Emerald Order?
I think so, but man, there are so many things out there. Like I've been hearing about destiny swapping. I'm not, this Emerald Order thing feels like there could be something to it. So I don't know what it is. So, but one thing that does irritate me, I'm not talking about her comment at all, is that people will come up with all these spiritual buzzwords like destiny swapping and stuff. And it's like, especially with TikTok. And I'm just like, oh my God, another crazy theory. But it's like the reincarnation trap theory that we all go up and we're our souls are harvested by aliens and they feed on our souls and then they show us back to reincarnate. I'm like, that's complete bullshit. But that's the problem. There's so many things to look at. So it's like whatever resonates for you, I guess.
Yeah, do whatever you feel.
Yeah.
But that is, I do find it all interesting. Well, that kind of, sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't, or sometimes it feels that there could be some truth in that. But I guess there's that whole debate about whether there's truth or not, and you think, well, they kind of, you have to sort of think that there is, to some degree. But
it depends on which one. You gotta see if it resonates for you. That's the key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, we've just gone past the hour. Thank you everyone for your questions and for watching and listening. And yeah, you got an angelic realm class Sunday.
Yeah, energy class is Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern on my website, which is my screen name right down there. And we're gonna go to like angelic realm, some other places.
Cool.
It's usually what people want to do when I do these classes. So that'll be the Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I think it's like $67, 2-hour live Zoom. And people can use the code BELLS with a capital B. They'll get $65 off sessions. That's because it's a holiday kind of still over here. And people still in that energy. And yeah, I'm good to go.
Cool. Excellent. Just quickly before we go, says my take is we are all Love Shift Awakening says my take is we are all stuck in the loop. We shouldn't return back to Earth, but I hear some souls volunteered to help humanity. So it's kind of basically that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, possibly. I'm not going to say that that's not the case. Put it that way. So yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you, brother, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Yeah. Au revoir.